You know, recovery is such an important part of training for the Leadville Trail 100, and it's also a big part of what our title sponsor is all about. Floyd's of Leadville was in part built around the idea of rest and recovery for athletes. And that recovery portion is a reason why Fatty and I have used and continue to talk about the Floyd's Recovery Drink Mix.
Yeah, but here is the deal with recovery nutrition. Sometimes it's just not convenient to have it with you everywhere. You don't want that big gallon-sized bag of powder. You need something portable yet effective. And that is what Floyd's of Leadville Recovery Tonic is. 2-ounce shots designed to jumpstart recovery. They have sodium, they have potassium, and they start getting electrolytes back in balance, and of course a little bit of CBD to get you relaxed after your heart-pounding workouts.
And one other thing you'll notice is a little glucose added to those recovery shots. Floyd says the sugars help speed the delivery of the CBD. And by the way, the shots have no THC, just CBD in the isolate form, 50 milligrams per shot.
They come in 2 flavors, grape and orange. You can buy them individually or in boxes of 6, so go get your recovery jump started. Check out the Recovery Tonic Shots from Floyd's of Leadville, our presenting sponsor for 2 seasons in a row now at floydsofleadville.com, and use the code FATTY at checkout for a 15% discount on all your orders.
And thanks Floyd's of Leadville for sponsoring the show.
3, 2, 1.
Leadville, the podcast for the 100-mile mountain bike race presented by Floyd's of Leadville. It's season 3, episode 8 of the show that breaks down, builds up, gets you ready, and freaks you out for the highest and hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. I am Michael Hottie, also known as Hottie.
And I'm Eldon Nelson, sometimes known as Fatty. Hottie, before we dive into this episode, I want to give our listeners a quick update on the last episode we did, where we started asking some questions about COVID-19, Leadville, and the 2020 race. To be frank, I was pretty nervous to air that episode, but it had shifted my thinking, and I believe there are a lot more questions to ask, and we want to be the place where we can ask them, and we are going to be. Yesterday, I talked with the CEO of a hospital about 2 hours away from Leadville that handles a lot of COVID-19 patients. Today, I talked with someone who is an ER doctor in Leadville and has done the race a half dozen times. And I'm hopeful, someday we'll have him on the show. Also today, I talked with Michelle Duffy of Lifetime, and she's been on the show before, obviously. Great, really great person there. She listened to the show that we did last week, and others at Lifetime have also listened to it. She said they appreciated how much we care about that race, and that we're willing to address who the pandemic could affect and how. And I've asked her to come back on the show and talk with us about how Lifetime is making their decisions. And she says she's going to work on that. So I think it's worth noting here that Lifetime's hard decisions this year obviously did not start with COVID-19. They started with the registration mistake, and I would say they handled that in the most racer-friendly way they possibly could have. I think they earned our trust there. Honestly, they did. And they've shown that they are wanting to do the right thing for the racers and for the members of the community. So I'm looking forward to talking with them more as we navigate this thing. And I'm also happy to say that in this episode, we are not talking about any of that. We're going to take a breather from this very heavy, very serious talk to talk about more about how we can get faster and do whatever challenges in cycling that we are going to be taking on this year. We're going to take a look at training apps. And I've talked to, I've obviously said how much I love Trainer Road many times. This show, we're going to talk a little bit about others, including Trainer Road, but other training apps. And who better to break them down than Rainmaker, known to most of the whole world, anyone who loves tech and exercise, as the deep diver in chief, DC Rainmaker.
Yeah, happy to have him on the show. We also have a follow-up interview with Garmin. Last year we spoke with product manager Kenny Carlson on how to use your Garmin device on race day. Now, this year we asked him to explain how to take races or activities you've recorded and turn them into smart trainer workouts.
Before we get to those two interviews, though, Hottie, if you want to order yourself a Leadville podcast jersey, you know what you need to do?
Well, I head over to our jersey pre-order page and
Nope. Sorry, Hottie. That was a trick question. Hottie, the pre-order for our kit is over and the order is out the door. However, this race, the Leadville 100, is not the only race, and DNA can make you a kit for any occasion, just like they did for us. And they can take care of you from soup to nuts, from design to production to ordering to fulfillment. And they do this year-round. It is what they do best. I think anyone who ordered one of our kits can attest DNA does amazing work.
So if our listeners want to have their own custom gear designed, DNA is offering a 10% discount to our listeners. Just go to dnacycling.com and in the custom apparel inquiry page, choose other in the Where Did You Hear About Us drop down. Then type Leadville Podcast. You're going to love the look and fit of your custom kit.
Oh, I am so stoked for us to get ours.
For the first couple seasons of the show, I would always suggest to racers, watch those 2 Race Across the Sky movies to get a good idea just what the Leadville course is all about. And I still think that's a great idea, you know. The movies tackle the course's main objectives in order. There's excellent visuals of most of the 103 miles. And as a bonus, in the 2010 edition of that movie, you see Fatty in all his glory as he is one of the interviews used to describe the LT100 experience.
Every single year I make a game out of counting the number of flats I see as I come down power line. That number is always greater than 5. There are a lot of people who flat out coming down power line.
Oh, you got a flat tire.
Oh, shit.
Yeah.
Get out of the course.
Get out of the course. Come on over.
But that was 10 years ago, and technology has come a long way towards helping getting ready for what is the highest, hardest one-day mountain bike race in the country. When it comes to reviews of bike gadgetry, bike tech, is there anyone more thorough than DC Rainmaker?
No.
We think not. He is legendary for his lengthy and detailed reviews of power meters, smart trainers, GPS devices, drones, and cameras.
Yeah, I have told him before, I don't buy anything of any significance in technology and exercise without consulting his review first. And with a lot of us training indoors, we want to focus on training apps. DC Rainmaker has a fresh review out on apps that make you your smart trainer, well, smarter. In particular, we were looking for an app or apps that can help us get ready for Leadville, both from a fitness level and from a course recon level. So here's our chat with Ray Maker, or as you probably know him, DC Rainmaker.
Ray, let's start off with your 2020 Trainer App Guide, which is currently on your website, dcrainmaker.com, and you've updated your look at all the training apps, not all of them, but the major ones out there. In fact, I think there's 11 at all in your review. So give us a rundown of the training app guide from DC Rainmakers this year.
Yeah, 11 is actually, it's a funny number to get to that, in fact, because like you said, there used to be more, right? There used to be, last time I did it was 20 apps. And I realized that the reason I never got to doing it every year was because I got to like app number 6 and I just gave up every time. I just like, this is too much. But this time I kept on going, and eventually at 11 I gave up. And it's always tough to decide like where that line is, right? Who do you decide doesn't make the cut? And I try to like look at user numbers and things like that, and interest and all that kind of stuff. And if there's an app that's up and coming that has lots of interest, maybe not quite the user numbers and including them, but 11's where I was at. And it covers the broad range from apps like Zwift, which have probably about 350 to 400,000 users, to some apps that have, my guess is, in the tens of thousands of users. Keeping in mind that over the last 2 months, a lot of these smaller apps have doubled, tripled, quadrupled their user numbers and user rates, insane numbers, really, for the smaller side. And Zwift has it the larger side too, but especially the smaller apps where people have kind of experimented and played the field a little bit as they've had more time indoors. So I try to include all those and covering everything from the Zwift type apps, which are, I don't want to say gaming because it's not really true, but they, by their own admission, if you walk into Zwift's headquarters, they see themselves as a gaming company. So it's written on the walls. It's, I can't remember exact wording, but it's something like Zwift as a game or something like that. And so they see that to pure, like, cold, hard erg training apps like Trainer Road. That's just a number on the screen and you follow the number and that's it. So within that, there's also ones that are more outdoor, real video type apps. So things like KinoMap or Ruby to a degree, even parts of Be Cool and Full Gas, of course, that are just about having a video that you're following, that the video may change the speed based on your power output or your virtual speed in effect. And so those are kind of the three rough categories of things, of gamified apps, straight up hardcore training apps, and then at the other end, at those sort of the video type apps.
So many. And so let's refine the universe of your audience, which is huge and is really anyone who is interested in the intersection of technology and training, and refine it to the Leadville racer. What apps are going to be most valuable or useful for them, and why?
I think there's probably two answers to that. There's the coach answer, and then there's the keeping you entertained answer, right? The coach answer would say that any of these apps can make you stronger, period. Like, doesn't matter what it's, even the Peloton app can make you stronger. It doesn't really matter. It's just...
Even the Peloton app.
Even the Peloton app. Are you applying load, right, to your training program week after week, and then having some sort of recovery from there and keep on doing that? That's just... It's fitness basics at, distilled to the most basic level. Now, the question is, do you want to do that in maybe a more entertaining way or a more race-appropriate, intelligent way? In other words, do you want to understand the course nuances? Do you want to be able to feel and know what those hills look like before they get you there, or mountains, or any element of that course, and to be able to replicate that indoors? And that's where you can start to slide a bit more towards the different areas. So if you look at something like Trainer Road, they have training programs in there that are designed for different events, or designed to be able to schedule an event and be able to have it build up to that. So from a pure training standpoint, I would say that looking at this entire list here, Train Road and probably to an element Exert and a little bit of Sufferfest are probably the core ones where if you want to be able to put a date in there and have it build you towards that goal, those apps will do that from just a pure suffering perspective of doing the hard work and, erg and just keep on cooking. On the flip side, if you want to go ahead and be a bit more entertained, perhaps, then that's where you look at things like KinoMap or Ruby in particular, as well as Be Cool and others. The challenge, though, is I've looked through a lot of the databases for those, and I didn't see Leadville video footage in any of them at this point. And maybe I've missed it, or maybe it's been labeled the wrong way or something. Like some of these have thousands, like tens of thousands of videos in them, and so you usually can search by location. You can usually search by name, but that doesn't mean that people uploading the footage did either of those two correctly. So still, when I did that, I didn't see it in there. But that's an opportunity for anyone. That's what's cool about some of these, like within KinoMap or in Ruby or Be Cool. If anyone out there has GoPro footage from Leadville of years past and wants to upload that, whether it be a portion of it or the entire thing somehow, then you can do that, and then someone else can ride it, and that's what makes it so fascinating.
Ruby does, Ray, have a video on board there. It's not an AR video, so you don't get the avatars involved, but you can follow along via video. It's someone shot their race video and just uploaded it. So it is there. You can follow along. It's not great. In fact, and it's not the whole course either. In fact, at one point, whoever shot the video stopped and pulled over and I think did a little nature call and you kind of get a sense that that's going on while the race is going by. So it is there. Actually, what I found by writing Ruby, one of the better things to do is actually go to their map side of things. They do have just courses that are map only. They give you kind of this Google Earth map view, and you can kind of follow yourself along as you ride the course, and then the app will go ahead and dish out the pain through your trainer, through your smart trainer, and that seemed to be a little more effective than the videos that Ruby had. Now, some apps, Ray, will allow you to import training workouts from outside sources. Who does the best job of that?
It's a messy world. And it's messy because while there are lots of formats and standards for workouts, about 4 roughly, each app does it differently, and each app has motivations and reasons to have partnerships with other apps. So for example, take Zwift. In Zwift, you can go ahead and link it up to Training Peaks, and that works out great because that's, obviously the largest platform out there for structured training, coaching type stuff. And within that, you can have your workouts from Training Peaks that your coach creates go directly to Zwift and open them up. And Full Gas has the same, and a few of the other platforms have that as well. But then there's all these individual files. So if your coach sends you an individual workout file, then you have to pull that in as well. And that's where it usually gets a bit messier. So in the case of Zwift, you have to convert it to a ZWO file, which is their semi-proprietary workout structure file. For other devices or platforms, you may have to convert it, or it may just consume it directly, like a .fit or a TCX type file. It's a bit messy. Like there's no good easy button across the board. And I think a little bit depends on what training log platform you're in, and then where you want to go to. So you kind of have to do a bit of a research there and say, well, if I'm in Training Peaks, then Zwift makes a ton of sense. But if I'm in today's plan, that might not work as well. And then you have something like Trainer Road, which you can pull those workouts in manually, but doesn't have that automatic sync to most of the providers out there. And that's probably more for a competitive reason than anything else, to be honest.
When someone goes into, in my case, the basement to start doing a training event, I want it to be a pretty simple, easy to do kind of thing, right? And when you have excessive complexity, it stops being something that is what you are doing as a way to get in a good workout, and it starts becoming something that you have to really get involved and educated on and become expert at. And that's not necessarily something everyone wants to do. But at the same time, you do want it to be sophisticated enough. And then, of course, there's the price part of that equation as well. So, is it affordable? So, what would you say is the right balance in the tension between all of those things, the complexity, fun, cost?
I think each app probably caters to different audiences with that. I think a really good example, though, of having that kind of behind the scenes slider is really Full Gas. Where, they've got their whole specialty is having these super refined outdoor videos that they've gone out and shot high quality in most cases, but on bikes. So they're clearly GoPros, and you kind of mentioned the example earlier of, their Leadville one on Ruby where the guy or the gal gets off and has a nature call, right? And having tried to film some of these, where I've gone and done like a climb to try to film one to then put it back into my computer later on, your brain is in a whole different realm of how to shoot these videos of like, do not stop for any reason. Do not, keep the bike perfectly still. So anyways, back to the point of Full Gas though, is that they've got this platform of videos that looks great. It's easy to use. The user interface is very Apple-esque, stunningly beautiful sort of thing, like super, super clean. But if you dive into the settings, you can do some crazy stuff. You can sit there and play with your CDA values or your rolling resistance or CRR values. You can go in and tweak how responsive things are. They have by far the best Wahoo Kicker Climb support of any app out there in terms of how they pre-feed the data of the climb, so it matches precisely to what you see on screen. Like the behind-the-scenes geekery is astounding. But if you don't click that settings button, you'll never see it. And it's just an easy, super, super simple app to use. And so that's a great balance between those two. And I think even to be fair to Zwift, they have a lot of that too. Like the depth of what you can do behind the scenes in Zwift, whether it be through geeky config files or, understand the platform, is super, super deep. And even Trainer Road, like the nuance of Trainer Road. There's an entire Trainer Road forum that's become one of the busiest, cycling kind of endurance focused places out there, about understanding the nuance and the details of how Trainer Road as an app works and how it, can be used as a training platform. So I think each of these apps does it in one way better than the others. I think having a clean user interface and having an easy to use app is so incredibly important. I think that's a core reason why the apps that you see that have done well, that's why they've done well. So using the Sufferfest, for example, the Sufferfest, as a long time started off on DVDs or whatever else, like way before everything else. And eventually they moved to a very basic computing app they had, but it was ugly and hard to use and just cumbersome, and nobody used it. And then a couple years back, they went and they hired Reed, one of the co-founders of Trainer Road, and he comes from a gaming company, and they went ahead and they basically revamped the app. And now the Sufferfest app is one of the most beautiful indoor training apps out there from a user interface standpoint, and it just feels easy to use because it is easy to use. And they've seen their user number skyrocket, and of course Wahoo acquired them, and we'll see what happens from here on out.
Right. And the nice thing is, it's not like you have to pick between the three, right? It's like getting magazine subscriptions. You can get more than one. And depending on what itch you need to scratch today, you can choose the one that works for you.
Absolutely. Yeah, you can. I mean, obviously that costs money.
Sure.
I think that.
But it's not a lot. I mean, none of them are like crazy expensive.
It's not a lot. Well, a lot of people spend more on gel packets on a single long ride than they do on, their. Let's be honest. Like that's the world we live in. And so, not everyone, but that's if you're doing long endurance rides, training for something that's going to be 5 to 12 hours long, then you're going to spend more in nutrition on that one ride than you are on a month's worth of stuff. Still, I always dream, by the way, on this is to have like the ski area pass of trainer apps. Like, how cool would it be that if you could have like the such and such pack and be able to use like 3 of these apps or something like that? That'd be awesome.
Fatty, I'm so glad you brought up price because, price can be an issue for people. I wanted to ask Ray, what about some of the free programs out there like Golden Cheetah? Do you have an opinion on any of those?
I think they're fantastic options. I think Golden Cheetah is an immensely deep cycling focused training log app that also can be used to control trainers. It's impressive. It's community. It's open source. It's super super cool stuff. I think the target audience for Golden Cheetah is mostly people who are happy to geek around with their computer. So to kind of Fatty's point earlier around being able to just jump on the app and not think about it and press play and go. You can get to that point in Golden Cheetah, but it's going to take a little bit of time to understand the application and to understand how to use it. And if you're willing to spend that little bit of time, then you can save lots of money over the course of many years of time. But it's something that it's not super intuitive, which has been really the only complaint people have ever had about Golden Cheetah is that it's a bit challenging to get going to get to understanding, but it's certainly a very, very good option. And I think, to be fair, one other thing to keep in mind right now is that almost every single trainer app out there is doing 30-day trials of some sort. So like now is more than ever before the time to play the field and see what you like and see what you don't like. And some of the apps are more expensive than others. Some of the apps even have different tiers of pricing. Like I know the tax app has different tiers of pricing, which is almost entirely just whether or not you get 720p versus 1080p video, for example. And so you can save a couple bucks doing that and things to consider.
All right, let's get to Leadville racers. And to set this up, Leadville racers are primarily that is after 2 things. They need fitness and they want course knowledge, specific course knowledge or specific course feel, if you will. In an ideal world, they would write a video or write to a video of the course and feel the correct effort through their smart trainer. And if we were really to get fancy, they would also get trail feedback, wind, and altitude simulation. But that, of course, is asking quite a bit out of any app. Question is, Ray, what, if anything, is out there that can tick at least a couple of those boxes?
It's tough to tick all the boxes, but I think you can get a couple of them. I think the number one that you want to focus on is probably getting the altitude piece done correct, and not necessarily the simulation of that, but the climbs done, so you get the gradient done correctly, and then to be able to simulate that over the course of the entire route, and to have that done cleanly. So, for example, you can take a file from the course that you have that's been created and pull it into most trainers or most even devices like a Garmin Edge or a Wahoo Element Series device and rewrite the course. But what most people find is that the execution of that tends to be a bit wobbly, if you will. So a lot of times the elevation isn't quite right, and you get these spikes where you'll be riding along and all of a sudden, boom, it just spikes the trainer resistance because the elevation wasn't perfect in that file. And so when that's done, then it spikes the trainer, even though you're on perfectly flat ground, or there's some nuance during a climb that doesn't feel right. And so that's where I think you go from taking a file yourself to where a company has gone through and cleaned up that file. And that's something that we see the Kino Maps and the Ruvies of the world to go through, and they have pretty advanced algorithms in the grand scheme of these trainer apps that can go and figure out what is real spikes, real bumps on a course versus what is just an incorrect data point. So you kind of want to step things up from there. Still, my guess is that there are some really super clean data files out there that people can ride. I'd be curious with your example of Ruby earlier. How was the feel of that from a consistency of the course standpoint?
Well, I mean, it's specifically with Leadville, it's very difficult to simulate what goes on in that town. I mean, it's at 10,000 feet. It's mostly an off-road event, so picking up the subtleties of power changes due to riding off-road so much is very difficult on any training app platform for any algorithm out there. But it wasn't bad. I did ride a couple of sections using the Ruby stuff, and my times were pretty spot on. Like I rode from Twin Lakes alternate feed zone back to the pipeline section, and it was fairly close in time. I was pretty pleased with that. So not bad, just not as hard as I would expect if I were actually on the course.
Yeah, I think there's, one of the things that, for example, Tax has their the road feel, which can simulate certain road textures. And like in my mind, the Tax road feel simulation of cobblestones is one of the most realistic things out there. Like when you hit cobblestones on a Tax trainer, it feels like cobblestones. It's an astounding feeling when you're like, boom, that's spot on. Most of the other textures, not so awesome. Like I would love to see a rock garden type texture of just slamming the crap out of the back of the trainer to be sitting there going, yep, that's what it feels like. Because over time that will catch up to you on those handlebars. If you're talking hours of that feeling, then you're going to get that sort of. And there, for example, there's also some large cobblestones. Like if you have a Tax trainer, you can go into the settings. So here's something: if you're really bored and want to just bonk the heck out of your trainer for a while, you can use the Tax app for a Tax trainer. And in that settings on the left-hand side, there's an option to turn on the road feel and just straight up turn it on. And you can choose any of the roughly, I think, 8 or 9 road feel patterns, and there's intensity. And so you can sit there and just play with that, like cobblestone or whatever one you want, and go all the way up in intensity and just leave it on. And so if you do want to feel what it feels like to be, bonked for a while, but that sort of thing that I think we can maybe see better coordination between apps. Like only a couple of apps actually support the Tax road feel. Zwift is one of them. But taking that into, for example, Zwift mountain biking, I'm sure you guys have tried the little mountain biking segment out on Zwift, and it's like 10 minutes long, give or take, but doesn't support road feel in any meaningful way. And the steering is cool in the sense that it does keep you mentally focused on steering, but it's 10 minutes long. And so you can only do that so many times, and it's not a full course. It's not, a 45-minute course. And Zwift has talked about that at Eurobike last year. They had a big indoor training event sort of thing. And one of the things that was discussed at length was indoor cycling it was mountain biking in the indoor cycling scene, and how to get more folks that are on mountain bikes into indoor cycling, indoor apps. And, obviously that was the time they just had announced the mountain biking portion there and steering. But nothing much has happened since then. And so it'd be interesting to see where that goes over the next couple of years.
In the spirit of this indoor training show, how about something from Shimano that goes along with our theme? Now, you may not give much thought to shoes when it comes to your trainer sessions, but Shimano has.
Yeah, Shimano has a shoe that is actually designed for indoor sessions, whether that be you and your smart trainer or a future spin class. The IC5 borrows some ideas from Shimano's tri-shoes, like a mesh upper for superior venting and quick drying, and they can also be worn without socks, which is really nice when you want to stay nice and cool.
But the IC5 also has some features that set it apart from the tri-shoes. It takes an SPD mountain bike cleat, so you can clip in at the gym, and to prevent the slip and slide effect of walking in a road shoe with mountain bike cleats on, Shimano added some tread and a little flex so you can safely scoot across a gym floor, or your garage floor for that matter. A single BOA straps you in, and a heel strap makes getting in and out a quick affair too.
Yeah, such a smart idea, and a great price too at $125. These shoes come from the women's line, so size comes out at top of 44. But guys, no one will know or judge you for having a pair, especially if your feet stay cool and allow you to extend those long indoor training sessions. So Go to bike.shimano.com for more. And we're also going to be sure to have a link in the show notes at this episode at Leadville100podcast.com. Now back to DC Rainmaker and the future of indoor training. Where do you think we will go? I mean, are we going to eventually be able to have what I would call, a fun uphill and downhill mountain bike ride on your trainer where it feels comparable?
I think absolutely. I think that's like, if we look at where the focus of indoor sports tech over the last 6 to 12 months and over the next couple of years, it's all about what I would describe as accessories, right? So like the number of things that you can do to make a trainer harder or easier has sort of maxed out. Like, I mean, that's really it. You can either make the bike pedaling harder or easier. That's all you can really do at its core. So you got to add accessories. So we saw Wahoo with the Kicker Climb, I think 2 years ago now or so. We've seen, rocker plates become more and more popular. Ceres got into that game this past summer with their $1,100 or whatever it was MP1 rocker plate. And we're seeing more companies go into this realm. We saw Elite with the Steerzo to be able to churn the bike of how do you have accessories that enhance that experience. Now, it won't be for everyone, right? If you look at the Wahoo Kicker Climb when it first came out, the audience was split of this is the stupidest thing ever, who wants to waste $600 on that, to this is the greatest thing ever. And I think people that have ultimately bought one have generally been very, very happy with it. And the people that haven't bought one have been very, very happy they haven't bought one, right? It's one of those things of, when you use it, you're like, oh, this is great. But at the same time, when I don't use a Kicker Climb, I don't think about it. Like I don't miss that because it's just not something that I'm mentally attuned to until you get used to it for long, long periods of time. But I think your point of like there was at Eurobike that's been for a couple of years now. This demo in this main pavilion area, mountain biking demo. They've got fans hooked up. They've got a shaker plate thing. They've got a VR headset that you wear that you get sick after like 2 seconds of riding. But the concept of how to simulate things, and it goes up and down. It has all the bells and whistles, and it's designed for like bringing to events like conferences and company corporate events and stuff. It's not really designed as a productized thing, but that concept can be expanded. That's where things will ultimately go as companies figure out a way to commercialize those individual elements and then sell them to people who will happily buy them.
You looked at the Rivet indoor training app too, Ray. It offered braking and steering. Do they last? Are they still happening right now?
I don't know what they're up to. I mean, Rivet was essentially just one dude in the UK that did this in his spare time, and nothing that's awesome. I'm not discounting that at all. Like that's super cool. He did awesome stuff there, and I think he by himself, spurred Zwift onto doing some of the steering things and getting that thing moving a bit further and a bit faster than it might have happened otherwise. And I think he opened up people's eyes to what's possible with some of that. Do I think Rivet's going to become the next great app? Probably not, merely because, other apps will just simply add steering and braking and be done with it, versus going back to the whole conversation of how do you start a platform from zero and get it to Zwift scale. That costs a lot of money and that takes a lot of time and it's really tough to do. But I think what he showed in that application is super cool. And, technologically what they're doing behind the scenes around having everything being cloud hosted, that's where these platforms should be going so that, you can have the highest quality experience from a graphic standpoint on any hardware you want and not have to be tied to a big expensive gaming PC.
There are other ways, of course, to try and bring a more real-world feel into your workouts. And one of them I came across was bestbikesplit.com. What do you know about them? How can they help us get ready for our big specific events?
They're doing super cool stuff. They've been doing super cool stuff for years around race predictions primarily. So the ability to go ahead and feed in your workouts and feed in your race profile and go ahead and have it spit back out to you what it predicts will be your exact time. But more than that, how to actually race that course and how to train that course. So they're awesome stuff. It started, I'd say, mostly in the triathlon realm a number of years ago, where things are a bit more constant. If you're racing an Ironman, then for the most part, you're just hunkering down and you're following a power race plan and you're getting to the end of that, 112 miles and be done with it versus a mountain bike race or even a crit course. Something else is a whole different realm, but they're doing awesome stuff there that's definitely worthwhile digging into and applying in other areas. And I think for a course like Leadville, you have the variability and the length that Best Bike Split can do some super cool stuff there with predictions, as well as with helping you to plan that race day based on what you can actually output, as opposed to, being way too over under.
Yeah, they take in all kinds of interesting data points, don't they? And then they also help you develop a pacing strategy.
Tons and tons of data. Yeah, everything from wheel type to bike CDA. Like, you can tweak all that stuff, your drag. It's like you can geek out if you want to there, or you can kind of step back a little bit and go, let's just let them do their thing. But their stuff is super cool and crazy scary how close in predictions. Like, a lot of times near some of the big time trial stages in the tour or others, they'll spit out predictions for each of the riders in the days ahead of time for those time trials, and they'll be within like 1 second or 2 seconds. So we're not talking like being within like 5 or 10 minutes. We're talking like 1 or 2 seconds of these race times.
Yeah, I know a couple of years ago, Jonathan Lee over at Trainer Road, he was using Best Bike Split to figure out, he was trying to get to within seconds of what his predicted Leadville time would be, and was asking me for some details and extra data for pieces that he was adding in. I wonder how that eventually worked out for him. I didn't know what his predicted time for 2019 was, but yeah, it's astonishing how accurate of a result it will return if you are willing to put really good data into it.
And if you're willing to suffer, right? I mean, that is the ultimate challenge with Best Bike Split, is that it doesn't account for your mental state on the day of the race, right? And so, doing any sort of long distance endurance event, your fitness level is only part of that entire day. And for me, coming more from an Ironman background, for me, it was never my physical fitness that limited my performance that day. It was always mentally being X number of miles into a marathon and going, how many more hours do I have to do this for? And how much, or being 90 miles into the bike, your back just, splintering and going, how do I ride another hour and then run for, 26 miles? And that's where the only challenge with Best Bike Split is that it can't predict
your headspace,
how your headspace. Yep, exactly.
For the Zwifters out there, what additional information or benefit can they get by going to whatsonzwift.com?
That's a bit of more of a, almost as the name implies, a kind of daily like TV guide. Remember the TV guide back from like years ago? The same sort of thing, a TV guide for Zwift of here's what the world choice options are for this day and the next week or so ahead. Here are the events that are happening today. Here are the workouts that are available and group workouts, things like that. Those are all there. It's certainly it's a great like quick glance of things. I do think though that for the most part, the Zwift companion app has started to kind of replace some of that in terms of a lot of that's there in that companion app now that you can just do that with a quick glance. But I love that there are so many cool Zwift integrated sites out there. I think that's something that drives that community, is that there's a lot of ways that people will parse data, whether it be like Zwift Power or What's on Zwift or Zwift Analyzer, or they're just on and on and on of these sort of websites that have these cool niche things. It's sort of like Strava, right? Except Strava has an actual API for it and makes it super easy to integrate with them. There's 42,000 apps that integrate with Strava these days. Like 42. It's just mind-boggling to think.
It's mind-blowing. Yeah.
How do you, my head almost hurts at that, but that's like, I could sit there for what, like, I don't even know how many years I could do one app a day and never get to the end of it. But that same sort of thing at a very, very small scale exists for Zwift. And I think that's just one example of that.
Let's get to something Tom Dumoulin said recently, Ray. I think this caught your eye too. Of course, a lot of pros are in the virtual world since they're sidelined with their races. And Tom said this: virtual race results are not to be trusted. He says he gets why the online racing exists and it's better than nothing. But Dumoulin says this is not even close to reality. The results are not to be trusted, says Tom. The devices come from different brands. If not properly calibrated, of course, you're going to get wildly different results from people. The former Giro champ participated in the recent online Amstel Gold social ride recently. He said this, quote, I participated in the Gold race with an average power of 250 watts. He said most riders can't keep up with that pace, but I never overtook anyone. I'm afraid the watt problem that is, will last forever. Ray, do we have a problem here with all of these trainers and training apps with calibration and getting everyone on the same playing field?
Yeah, something's wrong with his kicker, is my impression from this.
Yeah. So I'd say up until the 250 watts, he was spot on, right? 250 watts isn't that high. But
that's me.
Up until that's me too. So yeah, I'm not sure what to say there. But up until that, he's 100% correct. He is 100% correct in that the accuracy of the trainers varies. And so that'll have a huge impact of it. They could be plus or minus 5% or plus or minus 2%. And, if you think about power accuracy, and that drives everything in these games. And so if you have something that's 2% low, that's a loss. That's without question why you're going to lose that race when you're talking that's only a half a second apart. That's huge. And I think the rules around it are challenging. For example, Zwift has been telling the pro athletes that they should be using trainers as a power source and not power meters as a power source. That's the latest communication of last week or two to the pro athletes, which makes no sense because I would say without question, almost all the power meters in the market today are more accurate than their trainer counterparts. So if you give me a room full of trainers and a room full of power meters, I'm going to choose a recent power meter over even older power meter for that matter, over a recent or an older trainer almost any day, because I trust most of those power meters for the most part more than I would trust most of the trainers. But it's challenging. There isn't an easy answer for this. I think Zwift needs to kind of step up their certification game a bit about what that means. For example, and I say Zwift, but it really impacts everyone. But I think Zwift started this. They've got the most stake in this. They're the ones that have pushed this the hardest. And so how do you certify the stuff that can be used remotely? And that's where I think Zwift needs to sort of come back to the table and say, how do we have a quote Zwift certified trainer? And there is a logo out there that says Zwift certified, but that doesn't mean anything. There's no testing actually behind that. That's purely a marketing thing. And so how do they actually have true testing, similar to what myself or GP Llama or other people out there have been doing around testing trainers for accuracy across a very specific and kind of designed protocol to test trainers at different speeds, different cadences, and all that kind of stuff that can be done. And that would be, in my mind, a starting point to this. Weight is still certainly an issue. There's been lots of talk about how that could be solved. I think that's a bigger nut to crack, but I think the simplistic version that people have done lately is posting themselves getting on a scale and posting themselves putting a 5 kilo weight on a scale or a known weight on a scale on like an Instagram live or whatever. We've seen a lot of top athletes do that to prove their weight is correct. That is for now a good way of dealing with it.
And there's going to keep being more. And what's exciting is where this is going. I love the trajectory that you're sort of outlining for us here, Ray, that there is, that in addition to the sophistication, enough sophistication that really it's almost too much to wrap our arms around right now, it's going to become sophisticated and easier until, writing in reality and writing in the basement are indistinguishable. That's kind of a cool future.
Yeah, I think it's awesome to see the industry maturing. I think the last few months have really opened up people's eyes to what's possible and also where the bar can be raised. So, looking at what we just talked about around that quote, I recently did a live stream where I did Alpe d'Huez concurrently with both with both Zwift and Full Gas side by side in a live stream on a single trainer. So I did one trainer paired to both apps, and I went. And I was curious, like what would happen? Who would get to the top first? They were both on the exact same course, the exact same starting point, using the same power, same everything, same settings, and who would win? And win being a quote sort of thing. And Zwift got to the top first, about 5 minutes faster than Full Gas. And so that starts to open up a whole can of questions of why? Why is one app on the exact same profile gradient? Like that was all verified. And that as you peel back the onion more and more on some of these things, just when you think you figured it out, then it's like, oh, wow, maybe not. And as we've peeled back the onion on this one, it's like, oh, bike weight isn't accounted for properly in Zwift. So the bike weight is roughly set to about 5 pounds. And so those are things that impact events like Leadville. If you were to put a virtual version of that and your bike is only 5 pounds, like, yes, you're going to ascend faster in, on a hilly course or a mountainous course in Zwift than you would on full gas. And so that isn't a slam on Zwift, but more as these are really complex things to solve, and to make them easy is often, it should be really the main goal. And I think it's cool to see over the last couple months, these companies really doubling and tripling, quadrupling down on features, on, how to make the user experience better, on how to make the community better, and how to fix some of the outstanding things that may be out there. And understanding that it's never going to be perfect. But I think it can be better, and I think they're all doing a really good job of getting there.
All right, folks, you can continue your deep dive on this topic by going to DCRainmaker.com. Ray also has a YouTube channel and a podcast, I believe, too. Ray, thanks so much for joining the show and setting us straight on our indoor training as we prep for our big events.
No, thanks for having me on. It's always fun to chat about this kind of stuff, and I appreciate it.
Up next, an interview with Garmin on how to turn a Leadville file into a Leadville workout.
Yeah, but first we want to say something about Envy. Hottie, you know how I'm building a bike right now, and that build is exciting. And Envy has a way to kick it up a notch. They have a really great custom decal program that is really cool. Customers get to choose patterns and colorways for decals that are just amazing.
Now, Envy is known for its design and engineering, but they also know when it is better to let someone else do the job. And that's what they have done with these decals. Once the customer picks out their look on the Envy site, Envy has a veteran print house produce them. The decals can be ordered with M Series, G Series, SES, and Foundation Collection wheel sets. Or a customer who already owns a pair can give their wheels some new pop by just ordering those decals.
Yeah, I am definitely going to be doing that on my older wheel set for my single speed, my Specialized single speed, as well as for my felt geared hardtail. I got old wheels that are going to be looking brand new with these. So check out the new custom decal program on their website, envy.com. That is ENVE.com.
Fatty, let's finish up our training app deep dive with Garmin product manager Kenny Carlson. We had Kenny on last season talking about how to best use our Garmins on race day. This time around, we focus on race prep, both fitness and course feel. What do we need to do if we want to try and overlay the Leadville Trail 100 course into one of our workouts on a stationary smart trainer?
Yeah, so just to recap a little bit, over last year, the Garmin purchased tax, and so we have really had a renewed focus on indoor training. And one of the features that's really come out of that is replaying a course on your edge. And so you can use our Garmin Connect platform to go anywhere in the world and plan a course out if you would like, or pick one of your previous rides that you've done and send that to your edge to be replayed with any smart trainer that it's connected to. And
then, so the Garmin device will control your smart trainer. Let's talk about, first of all, if I had never been to a particular event like the Leadville Trail 100, and I went on to the mapping portion of my Garmin Connect and started plotting out the course. What level of accuracy can I expect by doing that? In other words, obviously the mapping will be there, but how much do the Garmin maps know about elevation changes, quick changes in hills or climbs, and how does that translate to my smart trainer?
Yeah, so when you're planning a course from scratch, we are using an elevation service, and it's not going to be quite as highly as accurate as maybe a previous ride that if you've done the race before, you find somebody else that's recorded the route, but it is generally pretty good. And then we have done some things to make sure that we smooth out any irregularities in the data that comes down to the edge while it's replaying that.
So we can expect a fairly accurate representation of the course, at least as it relates to our legs, when we make a course from scratch on the mapping service. Describe for us, Kenny, if we have ridden a course like the Leadville Trail 100 course and it's stored as activity, what are the benefits of creating a course from that activity, and how will our experience improve once we use that activity as a workout?
If you create a course from a previous activity, then we get, we get to work with the pretty much 1 second measurement all the way along that original route that was recorded by the device. And so we're just going to have a little bit more higher accuracy elevation data to work with. Generally, you're going to probably just get maybe a little bit more reactive changes in grade. That's more representative of what the actual terrain is like.
Could I use somebody else's activity and import it into my account and then save that as a course? Would that be a better representation of what I might be up against?
Yes, absolutely. That is possible, as long as that person has shared, their activity publicly and made it available to you. You can certainly download that and import it as a course into your account, and then use that on your edge.
Does it vary whether it's road, on-road, or off-road? Or are the paved roads out there a little better as far as when we map and make a course than off-road sections?
It's really going to come down to your location in the world. We have access to different levels of accuracy in the data that we get, and it's really plotted out in a grid. So in certain parts of the world, you have a very tight grid, say maybe every 30 meters you have a reference point, versus in other parts it's only every 100 meters. And so depending on where the course is in relation to the actual terrain, you can get different results. But in general, it is certainly pretty good and acceptable from the testing we have done.
So again, folks, for the people who have not raced Leadville and would like to get at least a feel for how things change on the course, you make a course using Garmin Connect. Go on their maps there, plot out the course, make a course, save it as a course onto your device, and then run that course as a workout, which you can do with a Garmin device, and then your Garmin will control your trainer. Now, Kenny, regards to the trainer, does the trainer have to be in erg mode? Does Garmin take care of that? Does your Garmin device take care of that once you start running it as a workout?
Yeah, so on our 30 series edges, we've really put a lot of effort into the indoor activity profile. So you just set your device to indoor mode, and then you're going to get presented with all the prompts and things to kind of help you connect to your trainer. And then once you're connected to the trainer, enter into following a course. And once you select that course you sent to your edge, we take it from there and control the trainer in the right mode to simulate that course.
And I noticed you've been specific about 30 series Garmin devices. With these, I recall that even like an 800 series, wouldn't that device also control a trainer? Just what are the differences in levels there as far as control are concerned?
Yeah, so if we look back in time a little bit, our 20 series edges, so 520, Edge 820, and then I guess also the Edge 1000, all have our initial implementation of the Smart Trainer control. And you can follow a course there, but you're not going to get as good of experience with a map showing and elevation profile showing on those devices, or be able to take advantage of Climb Pro that we talked about a little bit the last time, coming into that experience while you're indoors on the trainer from your edge.
Now, Kenny, for folks who really want to immerse themselves in this experience, I guess if you're into a Garmin device and a tax device, which you folks have a partnership with, they can further this experience somehow?
Tax has desktop software as well, like Zwift or Trainer Road, where you can replay recorded rides. And so if you want to get the experience maybe up on your TV that you've got set up for your indoor training experience, it's a little bit, it's not the perfect integration yet, but you can export a ride from Garmin Connect and import it into the tax training software. And then you can replay that ride and you'll get a lot larger kind of 3D view of the map. That's pretty cool to experience if you want a bigger screen than the Edge provides.
Awesome. Well, Kenny, thanks so much for helping us out. We're all trying to, do our rides without doing them, I guess. And this has been a great help.
Yeah, no problem. Thanks for having me on, and hope everybody's staying safe and keeping up with their training while they're stuck inside. And
we should add here that, the Wahoo Element, Bolt, and Roam are also capable of controlling your smart trainer. So if you're on one of those head units, you should be able to achieve the same experience using what Wahoo calls route mode. One other note on training apps, Fatty, in addition to Ruby and the Tax app, which we went over in both of those interviews, Be Cool, that's a training app, BKOOL, also has a function where you can ride to a map of a course while the app controls your trainer. And if you want just a great video of the Leadville Trail 100 course, but don't mind not getting resistance at the trainer, go to trailgenius.com, and under their events section, there's a map and a video of the Leadville 100 course. The video is very well shot and offers some terrific views of the entire Leadville course.
Wow, I'm going to have to try that out. So, Hottie, you know that Morton buy one, get one deal we talked about on the last episode of the show?
Right. It was a huge sale of the Feed.com's most popular energy gel and drinks.
Yeah, it was a real money where your mouth is moment for me in particular. I guess this is a confession plus, I don't know, a moment of pride here. I bought several $100s worth of Morton 160, 320, as well as the regular and caffeinated gels. In other words, I basically set myself up to train and hopefully race with Morton for the entire season. It is just a great set of products, and now I got everything I need.
Yeah, it sounds like a big load for you that should hopefully last you the summer, but we'll see. Over the past few years, this newcomer to energy foods has really taken off. The sale is over now, folks, but it's still worth the spending that you may want to do on this particular product.
Right. Yeah, I train with 160 in my bottles. I race with 320, and I use the gels basically every half hour, swapping in caffeinated gels when I know I've got an intense effort coming up on deck. I really do. I just use Morton all the time, and it really does work.
The Feed is back as a sponsor for Season 3, and while the buy one, get one sale is behind us, you can still get 15% off because you're a listener to this show. Go to thefeed.com/Leadville and sign up for a 15% discount, and then you'll be able to get lower prices on Morton's and everything else at The Feed. Go get signed up at thefeed.com/Leadville.
All right, let's wrap up Season 3, Episode 8 of the Leadville Podcast, presented by Floyd's of Leadville. If you like the show, give us a 5-star rating and review over at Apple Podcasts. Also, be sure to share it with your cycling friends. Support our sponsors, please. Let them know you appreciate them making this show possible.
Meanwhile, if you have ideas or questions for us, head to the Leadville100podcast.com comment section and get in touch. That's also where you can find a link to our Slack workspace and jump into our ongoing conversation. We've got channels for bikes and components, clothing, the course, crewing, nutrition, and hydration, tires, weather, really just everything regarding the Leadville 100.
Every single thing. We are always talking about Leadville. So anytime you need a fix, you know where to go. Good luck in your training. Thanks for listening, and we'll see you at the starting line.
The climb at St. Kevin's is going to be a key point in the race. Going into that, you're going to have to be in good position. That's where the first selection of the elite group of riders is going to be made.